Today, ships like the giant aircraft carriers operated by the US Navy are some of the largest man-made structures on the planet. Along with nuclear submarines, they allow America to deliver awesome power against targets all over the world. 150 years ago, the claim to be the world's most powerful warship went to a vessel that looked nothing like these high-tech wonders. But just like them, it was packed with the latest technology, and when it appeared, warfare at sea would change forever. Sitting unnoticed in shallow water in Half Moon Bay, Australia, lies one of the most important warships ever built. It's another example of what was once state-of-the-art engineering, now littering the oceans of the world. But this one is of particular historical importance.
Australia's got 7,500 historic shipwrecks in its waters, but it's only got one of these, only one monitor, one breastwork monitor from this incredible part of naval engineering. You know, this is the only ship in the world of this type.
Looking at her today, it's hard to believe that Her Majesty's Victorian ship Cerberus was ever a world leader. So what makes this battered wreck so significant? Tim Smith is Executive Director of the State Historical Authority, Heritage Victoria. He studied its fascinating story.
So the Cerberus was ordered and it was completed by 1870 and arrived here in Australia. So at the time it was spick and span. It was straight off the shipyard, and it was its first maiden voyage, longest voyage by one of these class of ships in history at the time.
HMVS Cerberus, literally the guardian of the underworld, is a magnificent technology demonstrator. On a very small displacement, it packs the most powerful armament imaginable. It's seaworthy enough to get all the way to Australia from its building yard in Britain. And it means that anybody coming into the approaches to Melbourne Harbour is going to get sunk.
By the middle of the 19th century, wooden warships were starting to be replaced by ironclads like the famous HMS Warrior. Despite their iron hulls, these ships followed the traditional layout that had been used for centuries. Was it just that the tradition of Nelson died hard?
There's a wonderful old myth that naval officers were so hidebound and conservative that they want to stick to what Nelson had used at Trafalgar all the way through the 19th century. This simply isn't true. Naval officers are professionals, and going to sea in ships and fighting battles requires you to be skilled and proficient. They all wanted the latest and best technology. What they didn't want was experimental, unproven technology that might fail. So what they insisted on was making sure that it worked before they actually took it into battle.
Then, one crucial invention changed the way warships were built and fought each other forever. During the Crimean War, a British naval officer called Cowper Coles designed an armoured box for warship guns. When it was mounted on a turntable for all-round fire, it became the gun turret.
Now, the beauty of gun turrets is that you can rotate them pretty much 360 degrees, so you can fire in any direction. One at the front, one at the back of the ship, you're good to go. You can maneuver your firepower wherever you need it very, very quickly.
The technology of the turret itself is actually quite humdrum. It's just an armoured box sitting on top of the turntable that you find in any railway station where you turn the locomotive round. But that system transforms warship design because you can't combine it with a full sailing rig or indeed high freeboard. So you change the design of ships. That's the only way of getting two very big guns on a small platform of shallow draft. It's not designed to fight on the open ocean.
For me, that's a revolutionary time in the design of battleships, because that design with the two gun turrets, one at each end of the ship, lasted us then for, well, decades to come.
Incredibly, it was the state of Victoria in Australia that led the way in combining the turret with a new design of warship. Public subscription helped pay for a ship to defend them against invasion. by Russia.
The willingness of people in the state of Victoria in Australia to put their hands in their pockets to pay out for this warship to protect themselves against Russian attack sounds a bit nutty on the surface, but actually there was a good reason why they did that, because in 1864 the Times reported that the Russian Pacific fleet, very much a danger to shipping, Allied shipping right across the Pacific, had actually received orders that in the event of war with Britain that might have broken out as a result of Britain's stance over the Polish revolt, would actually sail the fleet down to Australia and attack its ports, including Melbourne. And therefore, the purchase of the Cerberus, which was way ahead of its time in terms of military technology, this ironclad with quite powerful guns, would have played a very practical purpose, and that was to deter the Russians. And of course, we'll never know whether it actually would have served its purpose, because war never does break out. But it's not as mad a plan as it might seem at first sound.
What the citizens of Victoria wanted was a powerful warship to defend the approaches to the city of Melbourne. Work started in Britain on a new design called a breastwork monitor. With two 200-ton turrets, each carrying two 10-inch muzzle-loading guns, and a central armoured superstructure, she looked like no other fighting vessel.
Yeah, the Victorian government ordered this ship specially to defend this harbour. The construction began in 1867, and by 1870 the vessel was completely commissioned and ready to sail, arriving in Australia on the other side of the world. It was the longest voyage in history of this class of new capital ship. A remarkable feat, but a harrowing journey.
Launched in 1868, the 3,000-ton ship was named Cerberus, after the terrifying triple-headed dog guarding the underworld in Greek mythology. Now she faced a 10,000-mile voyage from Britain to her new home in Australia.
Biggest challenge for the Cerberus came at the very, very start of its lifetime. Built in Britain for operation in Australia, a 10,000-mile journey across some of the most treacherous seas on the planet. To get it there, they actually took out the guns and shipped them over separately and filled the turrets with coal. Coal in every available space on this ship to try and make sure they had enough fuel to cover the 10,000 miles. But just in case they didn't have enough, what did they have on board? Just as a little bit of extra power? Masts and sails, reverting back to old technology. But it just goes to show how impressive this ship was and the engineers behind it. A ship that was only really designed ever to be 30, 40 miles away from a coastline. It's an impressive feat.
When she finally reached Melbourne, Cerberus settled into a peacetime role. The Russians never came, and her guns were never used in anger.
The ultimate purpose of any military expenditure is to preserve peace. Winning wars is a very secondary consideration because it's expensive and messy and you can't guarantee the outcome. Cerberus, like the nuclear deterrent today, worked very well. The Russians never came, peace was preserved, Port Phillip Head was never bombarded.
In her day, Cerberus was one of the most powerful warships out there and could easily have taken care of her contemporaries. As it happened, she never had to fire her guns in anger because the pace of technology picked up so quickly. The design of battleships moved on enormously within a couple of decades. You would never have got to where technology went, that naval technology went, without having Cerberus, without the design and engineering that went in to designing Cerberus. She was part of that iterative process to get to the World War I battleships.
By the end of the First World War, the Cerberus had long outlived her usefulness. So what can you do with 3,000 tons of iron and steel from another era?
The Cerberus was lucky that it survived because it had been mothballed in Melbourne, the port of Melbourne, for many years. And that saved it, really. And then the opportunity came to sink the vessel, obtain the vessel and scuttle it here as a breakwater, and really to protect the coastal erosion. So the defender of the harbour became the defender of the coastline.